Welcome to More Than a Few Words, marketing conversation for business owners. This is your host, Lorraine Ball, and I am so excited today to be having another conversation with Tina Bakehouse. If you're a fan of the show, you've seen some of our earlier conversations, and today, this intuitive communication coach is going to share a little bit about what went wrong. Tina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. It's wonderful to be back.
It's so much fun to have you. And before the show even started, we were laughing and giggling because the reality is that everybody thinks successful people just wake up one morning successful.
Yeah, that is absolutely false. And we want to believe that the vulnerability and the beauty comes from the mistakes and the failures and the risks that we take. And if we fail to do risks, we fail to fail. And I've learned the most from my failures.
Awesome. Well, right now we're going to dig into one of them. Tina, what went wrong?
Well, it was early on in my career as an intuitive communication coach. I decided to do a 5-day workshop and to launch both a group coaching and an individual coaching. And so I did 5 days of yummy education. It was delicious. I'm a teacher first. That's my background, a communication professor. It was my backdrop. And so that part was great. The problem landed when I wasn't clear on my ask. I literally was like floating all over the place. Like I have a group coaching and I have an individual coaching. And when someone was interested, they're like, so you're charging the same exact amount of money for an individual experience with you as well as a group? And I'm like, So I really was not super clear on the thing that I was wanting to land. I was doing beautiful teachings. People wanted it, but they weren't sure of the thing that they would get, especially when it came to money. So I found in that moment, I learned so much about money mindset, clarity.
I'm laughing because when I first started, I had two very different audiences. And whenever you asked me what I did, I kind of talked about both.
And yes, and it's confusing. I mean, less is more. That's what I realized is like, I'm like, I have this thing and I have this thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I was even noticing even after that, I would go to networking events. And I was like, oh, sign up for my newsletter. And I've got this and this. And oh my gosh, the overwhelm, the deer in the headlights happens. People just want one thing. Just pick one.
So they absolutely want one thing. So if you would do it again, or my guess is you have done it since, what did you learn and what would you do differently?
Well, first of all, I learned, as we said earlier, with the one thing, it's like a TED Talk where what's that one idea we're spreading? We do not have 5 or 6 or 7. You may give tips, but you land on that one thing. That's the first lesson learned. The other piece, when I did it the next time and was vastly much more successful, is I picked group coaching. I thought this is what I need to foster. Individuals will come into my life when I do keynotes and conversations and networking. And so focus on the group because that's where you get to nurture. And guess what? Those 5 days, they're engaging with each other within the live workshop and they're getting to know each other and say, oh, if this person's doing it, if Jane's doing it, well, I'm going to do it because Cynthia's doing it. And that's what I learned is I picked that and then the positive panacea happened.
So you started with narrowing what your offer was and recognizing that if they bought that first product, some of them would move on to the second.
And the second was the higher price. I mean, that just made sense. It was more value. I mean, there's a difference of coaching 5 or 6 people at a time versus one. And so it just made more sense, more bang for my buck and theirs and as well.
So as you have gone forward and you've done this now for quite a while, have you other lessons, other things that you maybe do differently, whether it's in setting up the initial offer, creating the courses? Have you changed things in the mix to make sure that you delivered on that specific objective?
Yeah, I think at the core, what I have found, Lorraine, is aligning central focus as to who am I?
Mhm.
And I really have honed in on, I'm an intuitive communication coach. That word intuitive piques their interest, opens the door to conversation. So I no longer go into networking events saying, I'm going to sell, sell, sell. I'm just going to go and be interested and really, really deeply listen as to what is the core need that they have and get curious and ask those questions to elicit a very interesting conversation. So that's the first piece is, who are you as the person that you are, and so then that should align them with the product or service that you're selling.
Mhm.
As I've evolved and kind of what do I do more of, less of, is 3 buckets seems yummy, right? It's my coaching programs for individuals, and I'm leaning into exploring group again. I took a hiatus from that. Bucket 2 are team building workshops for corporate, and team 3 are keynotes, or bucket 3.
Yeah, awesome. And so as you've kind of gone through this process to make sure that you're not overwhelming, how do you decide what do you talk about when? Because obviously you're in front of somebody. How do you decide, am I going to lead with the keynote, lead with the team building, lead with the group coaching? Because many business owners have more than one product.
Right. Well, I make decisions with my body and what feels right and good and true in the moment. So I do what Abraham Hicks, who's an intuitive, talks about, which is segment intention. So I allow myself some spaciousness to really sit prior to that event, whether it's going into a bank and facilitating a team building workshop. That's a very different experience than going into an actual keynote for C-suite leaders, or walking into a networking event of small business owners. Vastly different. So I tap into what feels good and what am I excited about right now, and what is the need for this given group in this moment. And so when I walk into a small business owner group, a nice invite them to my newsletter feels nice. When I'm doing a big business keynote for high level, that seems to throw out an idea of individual coaching because of the caliber of what I'm speaking. I've got more, the more you're on stage, the more I think you can offer. So if you're just talking for a couple minutes, a newsletter is a low risk, maybe low or high reward. If you're 45 minutes to an hour for a keynote, that's more spacious time, effort. Therefore, people see you more. They're like, oh, I'm more apt to buy into her yummy credibility that she's sharing.
That's such a great point, that you have to match what you're offering to the audience and the particular platform. Now,
Yeah.
for a lot of my clients, their platform is social media, and so they're thinking about, how do I schedule posts? And I follow you on LinkedIn, so I know you're active there. How do you decide in that environment when you don't really know
Mhm.
necessarily as clearly who's going to be seeing? How do you schedule or decide to pick an offer?
I think it's a couple things. One, it's tuning into what really fuels your bucket and gives you joy and lights you up with energy. And what do you find depleting? Keynotes are the highest form of energy for me that depletes me. I have so much energies and lots of effort that goes into it. I enjoy them. The one-on-one is where it's my favorite place because I can really dive in. So that's the first piece, is what really brings you joy and energy, and what does your calendar look like, right? So I go by seasons, and summer, I like to do a soft summer so I have time to go outside and things like that. So scheduling a ton of big things in June, July when other people are vacationing does not feel good. It's timing, it's your energetic field, and looking also seasonally of, Thanksgiving time in the United States. It's great to talk about gratitude and maybe putting out there big thank yous on posts of past clients to start to massage and warm and invite others. So if you can align your energy to the calendar and flow of how you do work best, I like to, even though it's cold here in the Midwest, my winter is when I tend to rev things up because a lot of my work is virtual with national, international clients.
Absolutely. That is such great advice, to really look at the calendar. And that applies to really almost any business. There are some industries where they don't have the luxury perhaps of following their passion, but they still have to pay attention to the seasonality. No amount of no amount of selling snowballs in December is going to work.
Right,
It doesn't
right.
matter how passionate you are about those snowballs, right? So it's really finding that rhythm. Tina, this has been fabulous. Thank you for dropping back by.
Well, I feel as though, Lorraine, every time I have a conversation with you, it's very succinct, clear, and beautiful. More than few words, you're right. Few but vast.
Absolutely. You know what? I have the attention span of a flea. So I'm never going to do 25, 35, 45-minute conversations, but I think that makes sense for my audience.
Absolutely. Get a nugget and have it on a quick commute or a quick break.
Absolutely. Well, Tina, thank you again. I am going to encourage everybody, if you're listening and you'd like to know a little bit more about Tina's group coaching or having her as a featured keynote, check out tinabakehouse.com. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Lorraine.
And if you've enjoyed this conversation, if you'd like to find other resources for your business, hop over to More Than a Few Words. There you'll find hundreds of conversations just like this one, workbooks, white papers, and so much more. This has been another episode of More Than a Few Words. Thanks for listening.